As well as London, the 8 largest English cities have city deal status, and another 20 are being agreed currently. I want to talk about rail travel between these city regions, especially those journeys that don't involve London. My speech will not be about HS2, except in passing, partly because that subject has already been aired at length, but also because journeys between the 29 city regions involve 465 possible trips, and HS2 only directly covers 13 of that 465. These figures do not include Welsh or Scottish cities, and I'm sure other members may well wish to comment on their issues. Looking at past priorities for intercity rail investment, it has often seemed to be an assumption that the only thing people want to do when they get on a train is travel to London or from London. And research shows that prioritising transport heavily on connections to a capital tends to suck economic activity into that capital. As Chris Murray, Director of Core Cities, recently observed, this over-concentration is bad for the national economy in the long term. In contrast with other developed countries like France or Germany, the UK remains one of the most economically centralised countries in the world. The vast majority of significant companies and other institutions are headquartered in and around London. The government has a stated aim to rebalance the economy, and I believe that intercity rail investment can play a pivotal role in that endeavour. And others share my concerns. The former Business Secretary, Lord Mandelson, recently said there are literally dozens of rail and public transport projects urgently needed across the country that would make a significant economic and social impact. He also commented on the cuts to other intercity services that accompany the HS2 proposals. For example, loss of service from Stoke, Stockport, Coventry and Wilmslow, and long journey times to Carlisle. The Institute of Directors report that 80% of their members support increased investment in the existing intercity network. With excellent assistance from the House of Commons Library, I've conducted research on all the journeys between the English city regions, comparing fastest rail journey times against road miles as the best indicator of the actual distance between the cities. And many interesting facts emerge. From nearly every single city region, the fastest journey times are on the lines to London. Average speeds range from 63 miles an hour from the south coast to well over 100 miles an hour from many parts of the country. However, for journeys between cities outside London, overall fastest speeds can be in the 20 miles an hour, and many are in the 30s and 40s. Fastest journeys can involve absurd doglegging through London, for example, Cambridge to Sheffield, Ipswich to Newcastle, Swindon to Leicester. Journeys between the 29 key city regions can involve as many as 4 changes. These figures are the consequence of past investment focused on hub and spoke systems from London and underinvestment on other routes. And it is this which helps to concentrate economic and administrative power in the capital. The record of the previous government is poor, too much micromanagement, yet only 9 miles of electrification investment, fares up by 66%, but subsidies up by 1.7 billion too, and journey times are slower than they were 15 years ago. 61% of UK businesses are concerned that the UK's transport infrastructure lags behind international competitors. But I do welcome the steps this government is taking. A good example of the work needed is the Milton Keynes to Oxford route, currently at 22 miles an hour, one of the slowest possible journeys. So the government's decision to revive the east-west route to join these 2 city regions is very welcome and will provide the connectivity that will help to release potential. However, the Milton Keynes to Cambridge route at 24 miles an hour will remain one of the slowest in the country. There are other examples of very slow connectivity: Leicester to Coventry, Bournemouth to Bristol, Southend to Ipswich, Sunderland to Darlington. I could go on. My area of the North East had good journey times to London, but very poor to elsewhere. Is it right that it takes longer to get from Darlington to Manchester on a single train than it does to get to London? True. I know the current Business Secretary was stunned recently when he discovered how long he spent on the train travelling from Liverpool to Darlington. Ironically, his trip was to be present at the inauguration of the new intercity train factory at Newton Aycliffe, which, of course, is hugely welcome in my part of the world.
It's been a real pleasure to follow the Honourable Gentleman for Redcar, and I was pleased to hear him say, let's talk about something other than High Speed 2. Certainly in the far southwest, High Speed 2 and the money being spent on it is an issue. But there are, I think, between us in the southwest and your constituents in Redcar, a lot of commonality of concerns. And I should thank Madam Deputy Speaker, the Backbench Business Committee for allowing and encouraging this debate, which I think is a very important one, certainly for my constituents and for other members in the chamber today. I think I've lost count, quite frankly, of the number of times I and other members of Parliament representing seats in the South West have raised concerns about the need for investment in our intercity services and for the improved resilience, something which yet again is under pressure because of extreme weather. We need that investment, and as I say, continually we keep getting batted away by London and Whitehall. We talk about the benefits of the electrification, and I'm sure the Minister will do that. But those aren't actually going to percolate down as far as Plymouth, certainly in the immediate future, partly because of the unresolved issue about the line between Exeter and Plymouth via Dawlish. Benefits are some decades away, and I think whoever's in power after the next general election really has to stop pushing this away, and that's why we need to ensure, as my front bench have insisted, that High Speed 2 is not some open-ended cheque, that we need to keep a lock on exactly how much money goes into High Speed 2.
Honourable members have mentioned some of the routes I was going to talk about. The corridor from Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds and York, having that as a modern electrified fast service linking those great cities would, I think, be a tremendous boon to the north. And I hear I'm not speaking at all on behalf of Luton, I have to say. I'm speaking about my interest in railways in general and the country in general. There's a second route for electrification, which should be that from York, Sheffield, Derby, Birmingham, Bristol, Exeter, Plymouth and Penzance. That route linking all those big cities and giving a real chance of growth for the southwest in particular, as my honourable friend has mentioned. So those are important particular corridors, and I could go into more detail on others. We want fast electrified services on these routes, and they would be greatly beneficial to those regions. But I really want to focus today on a particular scheme which I have mentioned before, but I want to re-emphasise its importance. This is what I believe would be a major advance to upgrade the Birmingham Snow Hill to London line, which passes through Solihull, Leamington Spa, Banbury and other towns, and on which only a handful of trains currently run to and from each day to and from Marylebone. The line also runs directly to Paddington, a much more useful London terminus which links directly with Crossrail and thus to the city. Snow Hill is also in the centre of Birmingham and easily accessible to the business district. But there is a much more compelling and exciting possibility for this route. If it were to be electrified, a simple link to Crossrail at Old Oak Common would provide direct passenger services between the centre of Birmingham and the City of London and indeed Canary Wharf. Business travellers would have direct travel from city centre to city centre with no changes required, saving time and inconvenience. But there is more. The electrified Snow Hill to London line could also branch off at Greenford to join Crossrail going west and thus provide a direct service from Birmingham city centre to Heathrow. The electrification of that line and these two links to Crossrail would together cost no more than £500 million. And yet there is even still more than that. The Snow Hill line has a branch at Leamington linked to Birmingham Airport and opens up the possibility of direct non-stop electrified 125 mph services between Birmingham and Heathrow airports, as well as linking Birmingham Airport direct with Crossrail to the City of London. A 1-hour journey time between the airports would be a boon to both Birmingham and I think Heathrow, with Birmingham effectively a satellite to Heathrow and taking some of the pressure perhaps of growth of passenger traffic at Heathrow, as well as being advantageous to workers in Birmingham. I believe this scheme would be enormously beneficial economically at both ends of the route. It would, I think, breathe extra life into the West Midlands economy, take a little bit of the pressure off London, but also it would, I think, help services going further north as well, because one could come through Birmingham New Street, through the airport route, and onto that route directly as well. So there are all sorts of exciting possibilities, provided it's all electrified and upgraded, and even now it would be capable of 125 miles per hour services, which I think would be enough for those kind of journeys. Can I therefore urge the Minister, and indeed my own front bench and Network Rail, to give what I propose some serious thought? It is advanced on the basis of detailed advice from experienced railway engineers. It's not just my own idea. It would work. It would be easy to construct and bring great benefits at modest cost. I commend it to fellow members, and especially to both our front benches.
Now, Plymouth, though, is the 27th largest urban conurbation in the country. It's the 12th largest city. And for its transport infrastructure to be as bad as it is, I'm afraid, is, I think, a bit of a disgrace. And the really big issue for Plymouth and the West Country is that every time it rains, everybody holds its breath, because we don't know as to whether or not there is going to be a resilience so that we can continue to actually travel from Plymouth up to London, and whether or not that is actually going to be damaged and hurt by the storms which take place. And so I would urge my honourable friend to make sure that there is another alternative line which is produced going through north into Tavistock too, because that will be really helpful should at any stage the Dawlish route actually also falls to pieces too. And indeed this is the last year we most certainly saw, not only with the whole issue of landslips and things like that too, very big problems on our line as well. Now, unfortunately, we've also lost our airport. So there is a sense in Plymouth, I'm afraid, that we are somewhat isolated from the rest of the country too. And I know that others have been campaigning to try and get Newquay alive and well and happening, but there is real concern. The 37,000 people signed a petition in Plymouth to actually have that, to keep the airport open.
I know many people have said that this is not a debate about HS2, and it certainly isn't, but I think we can just be reminded about the amount of money that can be found when the political will is there to invest in our rail infrastructure. And speaking personally, I would far rather that money were invested in the general rail systems that so many of our constituents depend on, rather than what I see pretty much as a vanity project which is massively expensive and won't be delivering the kind of gains that we need.